created by that, the fact that we're not able to see life accurately. What other types of things do we miss out on when we won't let ourselves experience life as it really is? Well, many who have come along who've gone to another way of seeing life say that there's a lot more happening in life than what the average person experiences. A person who I respect a great deal is a man named Albert Einstein. Probably he's one of the greatest beings to have ever lived, not only for his scientific accomplishments and achievements, but for many of his other achievements. And I'd like to quote from Albert Einstein, probably one of the biggest things that we miss out on in life when we refuse to experience life the way it really is. And what he says is, a human being is a part of the whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion, he says, is a kind of prison for us, and our task must be to free ourselves from this prison. What kind of prison do we find ourselves in? And what is it that we do to ourselves as we refuse to allow ourselves to see life truly? There is a part of us, and it's called the ego, that will convince us that if we ever saw life truly, that'd be it. We'd be in big trouble. And the fact is, real aliveness only opens up when we experience life as it truly is. Probably one of the other things that we miss out on is what the true purpose of experiencing life is for. The fact is that you, in essence, the being that you are, as we said in the first section, is by definition love. And if we're not experiencing love in our lives, the ego will tell us we have to find the right person out there to love us. And if they withdraw their love, boy, are they in trouble. Look what they did to us. The fact is that we only experience love by experiencing our own essence. And we only experience our own essence, love, when we allow it to enter into this body and extend it and share it with others. When we refuse to do that, when we hold conditions, judgments about others, we withdraw our love from them. The truth is that we really withdraw love from our own experience. Oh yes, we happen to do it at the same time that they said the wrong word or gave us the look, right? Have you ever had that experience? Somebody gives you the look and all of a sudden it's trauma, right? Did you experience trauma because of what they did? No. You experienced trauma because you removed love from yourself. You put a condition on sharing with them who you are. And you missed out on the experience of it because you did that. The fact is, this body-mind unit, it's like an envelope. It's a device that's meant to embody us, the real being that we are. And it's not until we wake up and consciously enter this body that we get to experience who we really are. Oh, we've got lots of ego definitions for love. If you do this, if you do that, if I do this, then, of course, I'll love you. Is that love? No. The ego has a cheap copy for everything that's real in the spiritual dimension. And the spiritual dimension is simply the dimension on which we really exist, on which our true nature exists. There's nothing mystical about that statement. There's nothing religious about it. It simply means we live in another level. There's another level of energy that we exist in. Yes, we express here, but our true nature is somewhere else. In much the same way that, well, you know, you're sitting in a room right now. We know that at another level of vibration, there are radio waves zapping everywhere around you. But you don't hear a radio playing, do you? Unless you have an instrument tuned into a specific frequency that radio will pick up. Then you will hear the expression of the radio wave. Now, just because you don't hear the expression of the radio wave doesn't mean the radio wave doesn't exist in the room right now, does it? If we deny who we are, we don't experience who we are. That doesn't mean we don't exist. We always exist intact, in perfection. But if we hold energies, judgments, in this body-mind unit that are less than love, then what we do is we shut our true nature out. We keep ourselves out of experiencing life. And so what we do is we experience the ego's cheap copy. And we experience the ego's cheap copy through the mind. The ego basically is just a word for all of the mind energy that we've accumulated from the past. All of the thoughts and judgments that we've had about ourselves and about others, we hold within this mind, and that becomes our prism. That becomes the coloring through which we view life. So all of those thoughts, all of that mind energy from the past coagulates, as it were, and forms a false image of who we think we are. So we could go back to our diagram again, and the true being that we are, love, or the spiritual nature, the word that's been used to represent that is the word soul. And in the Aramaic language, if you go back and check the literal meaning of that word that's been translated to be soul, it can also be translated a tuner, a tuning mechanism. What do we choose to attune to? Do we attune to the mind and its past and its judgments and its evidence? If we do, then we don't experience being who we are. This body-mind unit was called the physical self or the carnal self. If you listen to all of the spiritual masters who've come down through the ages, basically they talked about an overcoming process. What was it that they talked about overcoming? They talked about overcoming the carnal, the physical, or the mental, the mind, the carnal body, the carnal mind. That in overcoming, and of course, we're back to our old favorite, the overcoming is done through the forgiveness process. The overcoming process is a process of canceling or letting loose of all of the energies that we hold from the past in our minds. Because as long as we, as spiritual beings, experience life only through our minds, then we only experience our mind's evidence about life, not life itself. Life is something that happens out here. The experience between our ears is our own reality. And we call that reality life, but it's not. Living in that world is what was called spiritually dead, because we weren't awake and aware on the level that we really existed. If you listen to the spiritual masters from the past, and you take a look at that word, spiritual, the truth is, our true nature is not physical, it's spiritual. And the masters offered us processes, tools, techniques for getting to our true nature. And in order to reach our true nature, we must use the processes. We must do the work of doing that. We must carry out the ritual that was meant to get us to our spirit nature, the spirituals. And each of those processes was a way of achieving awareness of who we really are. And what usually happens is the mind gets a hold of all of those belief systems and just adds it to the accumulation of beliefs. And we think that when we experience someone else talking about really truly being alive, really truly expressing as who they are, that we've actually experienced something. And all we've experienced is their information about that something. What the goal of all true teachings is to give each an opportunity to experience who they are. What usually happens is people stand around admiring the one who did it. rather than doing it themselves. Now, admiring the one who did it has great benefits. Admiring the one who did it is called faith. And that can be very useful because when we see someone out there who's able to live life differently than we are, then we have an opportunity to start to withdraw from our past, from our old mind energy, and say, there's a different way to do this. I don't have to experience all of this stuff from the past, all of this drama and trauma. I can do it differently. Those who've consciously developed a connection with the creative power within them, which is just another word for Einstein's unified field, Carl Jung's collective unconscious, Burr's L fields. There's that something in which it was said we live, move, and have our being. Now we can stand around and admire somebody else's connection and therefore never develop our own, or we can wake up and start to develop our own. When we watch someone else do it, we have an experience of someone else doing it. The goal of all true teachings was to lead each to a personal experience, personally experienced, not watching someone else. So we're each here to develop our connection. And the way that they do that, because the place where we individually connect is within us. There were many names. Again, if you go back and listen to, in the New Testament, the power that resided within, where we each make our own connection, was called the Father. It was the Father within me, when I become one, when I get connected. But when we hold a past that blocks us from being connected, then on the conscious level, we keep experiencing the past as our reality. A lot of people interpret reality as something that's going on out there. That is not reality. Reality happens between your ears. It's your own personal interpretation or perception of what it is that happened in life. If I asked each of you to get up and give us a short dissertation on what's taken place so far in the workshop, I guarantee that none of you would have the same thing to say as any other one. Why not? Because none of you have experienced the same reality as anyone else. Unless each of you have experienced it through your spiritual beingness, then you would have the exact same description as each other. But as long as we experience it through the mind interprets each experience. And the mind's interpretation can never be the experience. When the mind interprets, that's called private interpretation. That's why it was said, no private interpretation of the true teaching. That we each must go to developing our own connection to that something. And I'm not going to try to define that something. I'm not going to try to limit it with my concepts or my words. I'm sure it's much bigger and much greater than I can ever start to describe. But I do know it's there, and I do know that there are ways to get in touch with it. And one of the major ways is to let go of our past. Whenever we hold something in our past that is frightening, that is fearful to us, we carry behind the mind energy that is held there an emotion. And the emotion is the thing that knocks us spiritually unconscious. So until we start to experience who it is that we really are, and as we experience who we really are, start to experience what this body-mind unit is as an instrument of expression, we have no chance of going to this real level. We keep experiencing the same old mind energy and the same old emotions again and again. The ability to let loose of those energies is what leads us to a direct experience, a personal experience, personally experienced, of our spiritual beingness. As long as we are experiencing life through the mind, the only thing we are experiencing is the past. And what's another name for the past? If you go into the book of Job in the Old Testament, there's a place there where this thing is directly talked about. And what it says in the opening parts of that book is the sons of God. And what are the sons of God? Those who are led on the spiritual level by the creative power, or whatever name you want to use for it, are the sons of that power. Those who were led by the past, by their minds, this is the word Adamos, the red clay, the carnal. If you remember the Old Testament story, they talked in the creation story about Adam being created. And shortly after Adam is created, what happens to him? It says he fell into a deep sleep, right? Now you can read every word in that Old Testament and the New Testament and you won't find one word about Adam waking up. And that's because most of us are still asleep in Adamos, still asleep in the red clay. And we've not experienced who we really are yet. So it says in Job, the sons of God came together with God, and with them came Satan. And God said, Satan, from whence come you? And Satan said, from going to and fro upon the earth, from going back and forth upon it. Now, some may interpret just starting to talk about this as, oh, now we're getting into religion. Remember I said I was going to draw on several disciplines. There's only one place we can find any information about this. And when we start to understand what it is, it doesn't become something religious, it becomes something that applies in your life. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When we wake up to who we are. Yes, Satan's real, but it's not this terrible being out there with the pitchfork and the horns and the red suit and the red tail that's out to get us. What it is our own past. Now, this statement about Satan in the book of Job must have been important because it's repeated twice. At the end of the sentence, there's a period, and it starts over again, and it says, the sons of God came together with God, and with them came Satan. And God said, Satan, from whence come you? And Satan said, from going to and fro upon the earth, from going back and forth upon it. Now, what is to and fro, back and forth? But a statement of your past. If we are stuck and our spiritual essence is guided by the past, then we're trapped in what was called Satan, our going to and fro upon the earth, the back and forth upon it. And of course we'll ask the question, why is this happening to me again? Because there's nothing else to experience but this. As long as we experience through our minds, there is nothing available but the past. Now, people would say, oh, no, wait a minute, Michael. Now, I mean, here I am. I'm sitting listening to you speak right now, and it's obviously now, so I'm experiencing the present. Are you sure of that? First of all, let me just say that there's a reason why they called it the present. Do you know what it was? The reason is because whenever you're there, there's a gift, a present. If you have ever felt like life is not giving you what it is that you need, it's because you're not in the present, you're in the past. The gift that you need is always there in your life at every instant that you're willing to be with it. But if you can't be with the gift that life has to give you, you'll keep experiencing your past instead of it, and you'll wonder why life has such scarcity. The number one rule of the ego is scarcity. There's never enough. The number one rule out of our past is, I need something else. Give me what I need, life. But even if life delivers it, we're not there to get it. We're in our past. So this ego self, this coagulation of these old thoughts, forms a false image. And rather than connecting with the power within us, rather than being at one with your own true inner nature, you are blocked by this false image. And as long as we're blocked by the false image, we keep experiencing our ego nature as who we are, rather than the truth about who we are. We keep experiencing our past, which is just another word for Satan. Now, if you've only ever experienced life through your past, it's a tough one to comprehend. I mean, how do you get to that? Because I've been trained that experiencing life through our minds is what life is really about. And I've really mastered this thing called the mind. I mean, I know how to think. I know how to make it work. I know how to reason. Are you sure of that? Cycling information from the past isn't thinking. Cycling information from the past isn't reasoning. The fact is, thinking is a spiritual faculty. It's not a mental faculty. And until we experience our true nature, we're incapable of thinking. What we have called thinking is cycling information from the past. The fact is, if most people said what they thought, they'd be speechless. Because most of us have never truly thought. We've never awakened to that higher faculty. And we accept the mind's cheap substitute, which is cycling information. About 2% of people think. About 18%, the pure intellectuals, think they think. And the rest would rather die than think. When we wake up to who we are, that's when we awaken these higher faculties and start to experience life as it really is. Now let's just put this to the test. Let's get some experience of actually experiencing being the spiritual being. And how do we experience life when we experience it through our minds? And is our experience from the mind all from the past? What I'd like you to do, if you would, if you're at home watching this on the screen, or you in the audience, what I'd like you to do, if you would, is cooperate with me. And I'm going to give you some instructions, and I'd like you to follow along with me. And would you please put your right hand on your right ear? Would everyone do that? Now, if you look around, you will notice that as you hold your right hand on your right ear, take a look around. And notice that almost everyone's doing pretty much the same thing, right? Now, why is that? Okay, why don't you go ahead and put your hands down. Did you all do the same thing because you followed my directions? Well, that's one option, but let's look at what really happened. I know that in your mind there are brain cells. There's information from your past. Your mother trained you what the word right meant, the word hand and ear. When I spoke, I caused those brain cells to fire, and you were given a reality, and you followed the directions given to you by that reality. And the direction said, this is right, this is hand, and this is ear. And you did it. You didn't follow my directions. You followed the directions that came from your mind from the past. How do we verify that? Well, let's imagine we have somebody in the audience who had a mother that trained them differently from everybody else and told them that this was an ear instead of this. In response to my instructions, when everyone else did this, what would this person have done but that? Did you follow my instructions or the instructions that came from your mind? If the experience of life comes from your mind, the experience of life comes from the past. And those who only know how to experience life through their past were called dead. Our minds are molded. They're filled by those who went before us. And we're the dead, buried by the dead. The information in our own minds keeps us locked into the past. And when we do that, we're doomed to repeating it. We never awaken and express as who we really are when we're stuck in Satan. When we take information into the mind, when we take mind energy into the mind that is not of its highest and best, that is what we called in the first segment disintegrative energy, the energies that lead to dis-ease. There was a word that represented what it was to take the improper information into the mind. And the word was called sin. Now here's another one that's got some heavy religious connotations, right? You wouldn't believe it, the way that the world treats the word now. But you know, the word sin originally was meant to be positive feedback. Literally, the word in Aramaic comes from the archery ranges. And when you were firing at the target, the person was up front keeping score. When you missed the bullseye, they yelled sin, which meant off the mark. Take another shot. If in the beginning was the mind energy, and you put an energy that is inappropriate for your field into the system, and someone yells sin, it can be interpreted by the ego, which will say, grovel in this garbage and stay here, which means if that becomes our total focus, we're going to be stuck in it. Or we can use it to say, aha, I've put an energy into my system that doesn't belong there. It has defiled my temple. If I learn to forgive it and let loose of it, instead of experiencing my ego's interpretation of life, I can experience through my true nature. I can wake up to who I am. And then once we recognize that there's another level of living, the other level in the theological language was called heaven. A lot of people are looking at the ego's interpretation someplace out there. You know, we want to get there. The word heaven, every time it was referred to, said the kingdom of heaven is within us. And it's here, and it's now. It's not off in space somewhere at some other time. And it simply meant there's another level we can live from. And when we learn that there's another level, how do we usually first learn there's another level? The way that we usually learn first that there's another level is we see somebody else living from that level. And we go, wow, that's pretty good. I want to live that way. And when you realize that there's that other way to live, it gets exciting. Life becomes really exciting. And you want to be at that other level now. And you want to storm the gates. You can't storm the gates. What we need to do is our work. No, not leaving it to somebody else to do the work, but our work. We need to go into our own energy system and learn to forgive, learn to let loose of everything that's in the system that does not belong there. As we do, what we do is we dismantle the ego's reality or the ego's interpretation of life. And as we dismantle that, rather than on this conscious mind, this so-called screen of awareness, rather than our past and our ego writing the meaning of our experience here, we find that something else comes in. And a whole new meaning of life starts to happen. So when we experience life through our minds, we experience only the past. I'm going to draw a diagram on the board. And what do you suppose that is? Anyone? Two eyes peeking over a wall. No. A scrub woman on her knees? No. A tunnel? A two-door tunnel? No. Oh, come on, you guys got to know what that is. What is it? The truth is, it's a two-door igloo. Right? Now, why did someone say tunnel? Why did someone say someone peeking over a table? Why do you recognize it when I say igloo? You think if I took somebody from the jungles of South America and I said igloo, they'd know what I was talking about? If they have no brain cells for it, if they have no past about it, they can't experience that meaning. So our mind projects a meaning upon everything that happens in our life. Our mind has an interpretation for it. And the interpretation always comes from the past.